Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Joe Tyrrell and welcome back to the runoff, the season finale, the 23rd episode, I want to say, of the runoff 2022. Joining me for this edition, this special edition, Cam and Toby. Cameron, I'll start with you. How are you today?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Obviously today was a pretty busy day of sport, the final race of the F1 season, the first game of the World Cup. So yeah, been a pretty busy day of sport, and yeah, the finale delivered in terms of having a little battle for P2 in the race and in the championship, which is kind of all we were hoping for. Really, it's the only thing that was sort of left to play for in the race, and Abu Dhabi actually delivered it. So yeah, pretty happy with how the race went, to be honest.
Yep, Toby, there wasn't much on the line, but we got a little bit of a battle. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Joe. I second what Cam said. It was a really busy day of sport and a good day of sport as well. I think the race went quite well. There was some drama as per usual. So all in all, a good day, I'd say.
Yeah, I think the less said about Qatar's footballing ability, the better. Congratulations to Ecuador. They've won the World Cup opener. But we're here to talk about the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And for the most part, it was a procession for Max Verstappen, who followed the script that has been the script for most of this year, didn't he?
Yeah, it was completely dominant. It didn't ever look like he was not going to win the race. Did we even really see him on our TV screens? I'm not quite sure.
I
Even
actually don't remember
even
it.
even on his final lap, the only time we saw him was when he rounded the final corner and actually won. Whereas normally you see at least a couple of turns of the winner. But yeah, the whole focus was really on Leclerc and Perez, which was sort of all the race really, threw up in terms of excitement. There was obviously battles with Vettel and Ocon down the field and Hamilton, Sainz and Russell. But yeah, for Verstappen, it was a pretty easy drive. That's what now another win at Abu Dhabi for him. So yeah, I think that he'll be very pleased with it. Secure his 15th win. That is a pretty impressive achievement, and it's one that might well stand for a very, very long time. I'm not sure if I can see anyone having quite a dominant season as Verstappen's had this year.
Yeah, he has been ridiculously dominant this year. And no, I completely agree. Like a driver can be extremely dominant again, but to win 15 out of 22, isn't it?
Yeah.
After some races got cancelled is pretty ridiculous. Um, but we did get a little battle, didn't we, Toby, between Perez and what's his name, Charles Leclerc. We did get a little bit of a battle between them two, didn't we? Which is nice because the race didn't have much else going for it.
Yeah, I think probably the best part of the race was the small battles. Like you said, there wasn't anything really like major, but there was a lot of small ones going on. And then the whole Paris Leclerc thing had a lot of things riding on it. Obviously, the drama last week meant that Sergio had to, well, obviously he had to beat Leclerc anyway, but there was a lot more riding on it. And I think that has really come to backfire on Red Bull now that Leclerc did finish ahead. But yeah, I think I didn't see much of the battle myself. I sadly missed a bit of the race, but I don't know. I don't know if you two can comment more on it, but I think there
Yeah.
were lots of little battles all over. So
Yeah, I think it was good because obviously it was a split strategy, and for once, Ferrari seemed to have actually picked the
Get it
right
right.
strategy. It hasn't really been, a theme that we've seen much this season. But yeah, obviously Leclerc was on a one stop, Perez was on a two stop, and chasing him down on fresh tires, and was what 1.3 seconds behind in the
I
end.
think
But he
by
was
the end of it,
closing.
yeah.
It was closing sort of 6, 7 tenths per lap. So it was a question of is he going to catch him? And at one point, it did seem like he was going to catch him on the final lap, and we were going to have a final lap showdown. But he just fell short. But it was still entertaining, and it did look like Perez was going to get right up and amongst Leclerc in the final stages. So there was definitely some intrigue in that, in terms of a driver on fresher tires, trying to chase a driver on old tires.
Yeah, I think if Perez had another lap, he might have done it. I just think there was like a 1 or 2 lap period where he didn't make any progress into Leclerc's lead, and I think that sort of damaged him because the last 2 laps he sort of ate up about a second and a half, was closing in, but he just didn't have enough time in the end. So Charles Leclerc, fair play, takes P2 in the drivers' standings, which is a little bit of a consolation prize for Ferrari, not much more.
Yeah, for Red Bull, it'd be disappointing because obviously they've never
Yeah.
had a 1-2 in the championship, and this year with how Ferrari have been pretty reckless in terms of strategy and driver errors and that kind of thing, you kind of expected Red Bull to have that 1-2 wrapped up, even though Leclerc was so good at the start of the season. And yeah, for Red Bull looked like they were the quicker car this weekend for sure. And Ferrari didn't quite look up to it really, but obviously strategy paid off, and obviously it was a pivotal moment because the decision to go one stop for Ferrari was made when Leclerc was told pit opposite Perez, and obviously Perez then came into the pits, and then Ferrari from there obviously just decided to just go long and just go for the one stop and not pit again. So maybe if Perez had stayed out that one lap and Leclerc had come in, it would have been a different outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of little battles, we got one at the end between Ricciardo and Sebastian Vettel. Unfortunately, Vettel couldn't quite pip Ricciardo on the line. But it was nice to see Seb in the points for his final ever race. And he had an all right race. He had a good weekend, got into Q3, didn't he?
Let down massively by Aston Martin. The
Yeah.
strategy they had him on was
Well, I remember he
incredible.
qualified P9, and I was like, yeah, that's great. I looked up halfway through the race, he was like P19, and I was like, what have Aston Martin done there?
Literally, like he was literally battling with Ocon and Alonso. Ocon pitted. Aston Martin just kept Vettel out there, and then however much time passed, and Ocon was then like 2 seconds behind him, having already pitted, and Vettel hadn't. And then obviously by the time Vettel did pit, went all the way down to P19, and then fought his way through the field. But he probably would have been hoping for a little bit more than P10 because the pace that he showed on that first stint was pretty impressive. And if Aston Martin had gone for a two stop like all the midfield drivers really did, he probably would have finished maybe 8th.
Yeah, I think he's really grown into the season as Seb, as he had some really good results early on or a bit mixed. And then the last few weeks, I think he's been as reliable as ever, in my opinion.
He has looked really good. I think going on quickly back to your point there, Cam, but I think he was running, wasn't it like 3 seconds a lap slower at one point when he was like pushed really long or something like that?
That's crazy.
Which is just ridiculous. To then fight back after, obviously, and come up get a points finish. But he has it's odd. Like as soon as he announced his retirement, it's like he turned back into his former self and was just finding pace that didn't seem to be there anywhere in like the weeks prior. So I think Seb's obviously going to be happy. I think with the end of his season. Obviously, he's going to also be sad because he's retiring. But at the end of the day, to bow out the way he has, I think he'll be happy. The team will be happy, and I think the fans were just extremely happy to see him get the points and then do his donuts.
Yeah, that was it was nice to see him. But it was disappointing that Alonso and Hamilton couldn't like join him though because they obviously both retired. But
they both coincidentally retired. But no, it was a big shame. But no, fair play to Seb on a pretty ridiculous career, really, when you think about it. 4 titles, 2 of them were pretty even. Well, 2 of them very even, and then the other 2 were 2 ridiculously dominant seasons.
Yeah, to win 11 races in a row like he did, that's a record that I don't think will ever be broken. And yeah, he leaves the sport as a legend, really. So yeah, weird to see him gone though. I feel like next year with no Vettel on the grid, no Ricciardo, it's going to be strange to say the least.
Maybe a year of transition because it's like we've got all these new drivers coming in, replacing like proper big drivers. Like when we had that one year where like Albon, Russell, Norris came in, they were replacing like bang average drivers.
Yeah.
But like Piastri and who's at Aston Martin?
Well, Alonso's technically going there, but there's a massive.
There's a bit of a roundabout, yeah.
Yeah.
They're sort of replacing legends like Ricciardo, maybe a legend's a bit strong, but still a very, very, very good career. So yeah, it remains to be seen what happens, but we'll see how it goes. We'll leave that for 2023. Yeah. But 2022, the season finale, winners and losers, lads. Let's get into them. Who wants to start?
Go on, Toby.
Okay, so my winners and losers. Well, obviously winners first. It's been a long day. Apologies. My winners are. I'm going to mainly go Lando Norris, but then also a nice little shout out to Daniel Ricciardo. Obviously, Lando was there fighting with George Russell, which kind of surprised me because of how pacey everyone thought the Mercedes was, like coming into the race. But then he just had a really solid race and was there. I think at one point he was kind of in no man's land where he was 3 seconds behind Russell, but 3 seconds ahead of, at the point, it was Alonso who was in 8th. But he just stayed there, managed to hold his position. Then obviously when Hamilton retired, moved up a position up into 6th. Also got the fastest lap. And then Ricciardo actually finished in the points.
Held up
I feel
actually it's just so telling.
Yeah, I feel really like bad for saying actually, but I feel like it's a fair enough point for this season.
And he got to Q3 as well.
Like, yeah,
qualified,
but he did qualify 10th.
And he's got
to Q3. Been better than this time.
Yeah, I just think overall it was a decent. Well, it was a good weekend for McLaren, but they'll still be annoyed because they did lose to Alpine in the constructors. But that's not on this weekend. That's on races past. Yeah. So I think overall they'll be extremely happy.
Yeah. And Ricciardo got confirmed pretty much confirmed for a Red Bull reserve drive. So it's not all doom and gloom.
That is so imagine that what was it, 4 years ago, whatever, he leaves Red Bull. And he comes back, but as just a reserve driver. Just disappointing because the time at Renault was really good as well. So yeah, sad to see how his career sort of took a nosedive.
Year and year. Yeah. Gone downhill. But he's part of a winning team this weekend, in Toby's eyes anyway. Cam. He's effectively the biggest loser across the course of the season. The best loser. But he's your winner this week, Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, it was a good weekend for Leclerc because he obviously came into this level on points with Sergio Perez for second in the championship, and qualified, behind him. So it was looking like it was going to be a sort of easy second place in the race and in the championship for Perez, especially when those two Red Bulls at the front were starting to pull away because Verstappen was giving Perez DRS and sort of just dragging him along. And then obviously the decision, Perez slowed down a little bit. Verstappen gained an advantage in that sort of battle, I guess. And then Leclerc came back into it with the decision for Ferrari to only go on a 1-stop rather than a 2-stop. And ultimately it paid off. It did look like it was going to be one of those ones where if Perez had caught him, it would have just easily got past because of the fresher tyres. But, Perez couldn't put in the laps to make up the time lost in the pits. And that's credit to Charles Leclerc because on, used tyres, he managed to put in the laps to hold off, a driver in a Red Bull who looked quicker this weekend. And to finish second, obviously massive in the post-qualifying interview. George Russell and Lando Norris were like, yeah, Leclerc's got a cheeky little bonus in his contract if he finishes second in the championship. So whether or not that is true, obviously great news for Charles Leclerc if it is. But yeah, obviously Leclerc would be buzzing to finish second. Obviously would have come into this season and after the first few races and would have been disappointed with finishing second based on how Ferrari started. But with how recent races and the second half of the season has gone, he can only sort of be glad to finish second with how Perez looked like that position was sewn up. But with, the last couple of races, Leclerc's come back into it and, he's finished second in the championship. So that's massive for him.
Yeah. How do you think Charles Leclerc will reflect on this season, Toby? Positive or negative?
He'll probably take it in a negative way. I think he'll see it as a missed chance for a title, more so than a strong second place finish. He'll come back next season hunting, no doubt about it. So it's kind of all down to Ferrari now to not mess up and sort their car out just a little bit more, because I still feel like there is a gap. Well, there is definitely a gap between Red Bull and then Ferrari and Mercedes. So yeah, I think he'll be pushing as much as he can to try and improve himself, and then also will be nagging his team to try and sort their stuff out.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see if Ferrari hadn't made the strategical errors like with Leclerc, like at Silverstone, like at Monaco, and Leclerc hadn't made those driver errors like the one at Le Castellet, then would he have been even close to Verstappen? And if he wouldn't have been, then I don't think he can look back with disappointment. But I feel like they would have been very, very close if Ferrari and himself hadn't made those silly mistakes, which Verstappen just never really made throughout the season.
Yeah. Tough one for Charles Leclerc to take, I think. And he might have even more competition next year. So next year could be tough. But Toby, if your words of wisdom are any help for him, he will come back fighting. Losers now. Now, Toby, I've only just looked at your loser. Your loser is Red Bull. Now I think I get why, but explain yourself.
Podium.
Okay. So they won the race. They had a double podium. All this, but the way I'm looking at it is that they've missed out on the chance of having a 1-2. Obviously, if Verstappen had just let Perez pass, he would have had the advantage, and I feel like that potentially could have played into how things would have worked today, if you get what I'm saying. And overall, I just feel like Red Bull have really missed the chance to claim a 1-2, and that's why they're my losers.
Yeah,
They had a quicker car than Ferrari, didn't they? So like to not finish second with Perez is a disappointment, especially when
qualified P2.
Yeah, I feel like Verstappen could have just worked with Perez the whole race. Like he could have just stayed in DRS the whole, like made sure Perez was within DRS the whole race. And I know it's kind of a lot to ask, but if Red Bull was so insistent on trying to get a 1-2, Verstappen maybe could have just sort of hung with Perez and just ensured he had DRS the whole time. And if to give up a race win is probably too much to ask, especially when you're trying to set the record for like the most ever. But he maybe could have allowed Perez to be within DRS the whole race, and then maybe that would have played into it. But for Perez, he'll just be disappointed he couldn't like catch Leclerc or even be further enough ahead of Leclerc that it didn't matter.
That's what I feel like Mercedes have probably, that Mercedes era. That's what Mercedes was so good at, is just grinding out 1 and 2s. Like, mad.
Yeah, they did get so many of like Bottas just finishing second.
I was going to say, I think it also came down to Bottas obeying team orders, but I won't go back onto that subject.
Yeah, no, certain someone doesn't obey team orders, but yeah, a weird one for Red Bull. And actually, now you've explained yourself, Toby, I understand, and I think that's a fair point. You're losers, Red Bull. Cam, a sad way for Alonso to end his Renault/Alpine career.
Yeah, he's my loser this week, just because, like you say, the final race at Alpine, with how things have gone with Ocon and recently, he'll probably be glad to see the back of Alpine. But obviously, it's a team that he won, his 2 world championships with, and to go out with a DNF, which is yet another problem for him this season, I think. Yeah, he'll consider this race really disappointing. He'll already be looking, ahead to the time at Aston Martin and hoping for better things. But he's been so unlucky this season with issues sort of out of his control. But at the end of the day, he has finished behind his teammate. And for a driver like Alonso, you'd imagine that he should really be beating Ocon. And I think Ocon's a very, very good driver. But this is Fernando Alonso we're talking about. So he'll probably look at it and be very disappointed that he finished behind Ocon, acknowledging the fact that he's had far more issues out of his control, whether that be traffic in qualifying or, issues with the car or anything like that. But yeah, to come into the race, your final race with Alpine and not finish the race, similar to what Hamilton did really with Mercedes, but obviously it's Alonso's final race with Alpine, so he'll just be pretty. It's just a poor race really to finish his Alpine career. Plus, he didn't make it to Q3, so
yeah, disappointing for Alonso. Anything to add on Alonso, Toby? I just think he's been disappointing, hasn't it? Like all the reliability, and he seems fed up at Alpine after his comments last week about Ocon.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best time for him to go. If he had another year on his contract, I think he'd potentially try and find a way out of it. Obviously, that's just kind of just making stuff up. But it's just, I definitely think he's the thing is, when he's had a good car, he's looked good. Like he's looked pacey, but then obviously there must have been some issues with Esteban behind the scenes or something that's probably led to him getting even more fed up. Then you have the reliability issues on top of that, and yeah, you could just tell at the end of it, he's just. I still don't particularly get the move to Aston Martin myself, but
no, nor do I. Like I sort of understood the move back to Alpine, Renault, a bit of sentiment there. But now it just feels like he's just sticking around for the sake of it.
Yeah, I don't particularly know how well it's going to go with Lance Stroll either. But
he's going to absolutely destroy Lance Stroll though. Like
yeah,
Vettel got 37 points this year. Stroll got 18. That gap could be way more. If Aston Martin are actually have a car that can get to the points, yeah, Alonso's going to wipe the floor with Stroll.
Yeah. Well, Alonso could be a big winner against his teammate next year. Let's find out. But I've got a bit of a question for you, lads. I haven't done the maths. I haven't watched every episode back. But over the course of 22, 23 episodes, who do you think is the biggest loser? Who do you think's been voted loser and voted winner the most?
If
I've
you
got
had the
no
stats,
idea.
that would be great. But I imagine
Maybe it's
winner.
one we can find out. I haven't got if I've got the patience.
I don't think it would be Verstappen because we'd always just be like, oh, it's the boring answer to Verstappen. So I think
I
Lando
reckon
is a good shout
I was going to say Lando.
and then probably Leclerc also had a couple at the start of the year. And maybe Mercedes with like I feel like we probably said Mercedes a couple of times when they had
because they were sympathy vote.
They're better rate. Yeah, literally when they were finished like on the podium when they were doing really bad and we'd give them more for that. Losers
has got to be Ferrari.
Yeah, I think Ferrari. Yeah, weirdly, like the winners
Ferrari.
might be Leclerc potentially the most, but Ferrari will definitely be the losers the most because of like the errors they made.
Latifi's probably on there as well, but
No,
did we probably remember?
I don't.
Latifi
I don't
enough?
think Latifi because
but today was awful. Latifi today was. I think
it wasn't his fault for the Mick. I think it was Mick's fault though, wasn't it, for the crash?
Yeah, but I know obviously like he had that moment, but I don't know. At one stage, I worked out he was like 70 seconds behind Albon.
Albon.
I'm not sure what the actual final. Let me have a look now. What the final gap was, if I can find. Oh, it doesn't say because it's just the lap. But he was definitely like 70 seconds at one point behind Albon. So yeah, I think that Ferrari will be the most commonly.
Do you know what? I reckon Ricciardo.
Yeah, maybe
yeah. I think so. I think Ricciardo's a good shout. Ferrari and Leclerc, winners and losers. Who knows? It's been a long season, lads. But we haven't got like a race to preview now. Like, should we just? Like, yeah. What do we do now? The season's over.
I have two comments or things which I want to ask you to.
Go on.
The first being Mick Schumacher's donuts.
Did he do donuts?
Mick Schumacher did donuts.
Did you not know?
Did he do donuts?
Mick Schumacher did donuts and then got told off over team radio. To which his response was "Love you too," and then the Haas team tweeted out a picture of him doing donuts with the donut emojis.
Really, I'm gonna have to Google this.
Which
I didn't even know. I knew obviously
really baffled me.
Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez did it with, and then Vettel did his own ones. But
I saw Vettel do it, and that's it.
I mean, the only thing that he's really done well in is Austria this year. Not quite sure he's had a career to do donuts in, but
where did they finish in the standings?
What, Haas?
Yeah,
it would have been what P. Let me have a check now. I think it was P7 or P8. P8, yeah, they finished P8. 2 points ahead of AlphaTauri, who finished P9.
That is an AlphaTauri have had a stinker.
A bad season, yeah.
I can't find it now.
They deleted it. Oh yeah, I've got it.
He definitely did donuts.
We got some post-race donuts from Mick. Hopefully we get the videos and photos through soon. Yeah, I got it here.
That's crazy. Wow, I didn't even know that. Wow.
So they've tweeted that, but his team have told him off.
Yeah. And Mick's response was "Love you too" to him being shouted at to do donuts, which I just found funny. And then the other one is I believe it was Sky Sports tweeted Logan Sargent to Williams with the tick, all just because he got his final super license point.
Yeah,
but done. Is it confirmed?
It's not like confirmed, but
I was going to say because Williams haven't tweeted anything or anything like that.
The Doralton Capital bloke, did he say something? Didn't he? He just said,
Jos Capito said at the US Grand Prix that if
he has enough, he'll
enough license points, he will be driving for us next year. And because he finished fourth in F2, he has enough super license points. Although
he finished exactly fourth.
Yeah, well, yeah, he had to finish top 6. I think he was third going into this weekend, but dropped behind Liam Lawson in today's race. F2 race. So he finished fourth, so he's got enough. But like finishing fourth in F2 and getting an F1 seat is and like Drugovich, who won the championship, doesn't. It's interesting.
It's a bit like
that's what everyone's saying.
Guan Yu Zhou, isn't it? Like
I think wasn't it? I think I saw somewhere that Drugovich has been in F2 for 3 years though, whereas this was Sargent's first year.
Yeah, to be fair, for rookie season it was decent from Sargent.
And he won Rookie of the Year as well.
Yeah, someone like Piastri won F2 in his rookie year, obviously an outstanding talent. And Sargent was good in F3 when he had like a decent car, was challenging with Piastri when they were in F3 together. So yeah, Piastri and Porsche.
the US Grand Prix gets an extra element to it.
Williams are going to have some big turnout there.
Yeah. And in Miami.
I was going to say, which
in
and
Las
which-
Vegas.
Yeah, I
which
forgot there's
US
three.
Grand Prix?
US.
That's another thing. I can't
That
wait.
might be a reason why they've, like, weirdly actually might be a reason, like a big reason why they've done it.
I'd say
I
so.
wouldn't be at all shocked.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah. Well, lads, I don't think there's much else to say other than thank you for joining me
We
this
need
season.
to do the predictions, mate. Finish the predictions.
Oh! Yes, thank you for reminding me.
Well, I'm not
God.
sure you want to be reminded, Joe, because you finished last.
Oh,
Our
see, I was riding high from I think I predicted like a Seb P5 or something, riding high, and then I've had a stinker.
I swear I said Seb P5.
Yeah, for this race, Toby did. But in terms of, Joe was once leading after the Japanese Grand Prix. Joe was in the lead, and after
Throwing
Abu
it
Dhabi,
away.
He's finished last. And since that Japanese Grand Prix, actually, he's not got a single point in the predictions. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4 races since then, and Joe's not got a single point in our predictions lead.
Out of 20, I've got 0. Sounds like my fantasy football team.
Yeah. So your predictions were Hamilton pole and win and a Haas top 8. So those were all incorrect. I also got all 3 incorrect. So I finished on 16. I predicted Russell pole and win and Alonso top 5. We were both thinking Mercedes were going to carry on their form from Brazil. And Toby got 1 point right. Max win, and he predicted that Sainz would be on pole and Vettel top 5. So the final standings of our predictor league for 2022. Obviously, we didn't start it right at the very start of the season. Is Joe Boston on 15. I'm second on 16, and Toby is top with 18 points. Congratulations, Toby. You win our predictor league. You are the best.
Yeah.
The
Congratulations.
best,
Toby.
worst predictor.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say none of us can really take much pride in these results.
No, completely not.
I haven't got a trophy for you, Toby.
Okay.
But you can take pride in the fact that you were the best worst.
Just stick a little crown here when coming.
All right. I've got to edit it anyway, so I'll stick a little crown on it for you.
Thank you.
Well, we'll predict. Maybe we'll predict us. We'll do the whole season next year. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. But lads, as I almost jumped the gun just now, thank you for joining me this season. It's been an absolute pleasure to record these after every race. Fair play.
Yeah, well done us. Pat on the back.
Fair play, because we have had some stinking races this year. We've had some good ones.
We've had some late podcast recordings as well.
Yeah, this is up there. To be fair,
yeah,
this is up there. But no, as genuinely, lads, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having us all over the season, mate.
Thank you, mate. It's been really good.
It's my pleasure. We might do an end of season review, but make sure you stay tuned for the end of season awards, which are coming later in the week. And we're gonna have loads of content over the winter anyway.
And
so
also watch Joe's video on the World F1 drivers as well.
If you like football, I've put too much time into that. So make sure you go and watch it. But no, seriously, thank you to our audience. Thank you for watching. Go watch the podcast on Spotify. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn if you want. But from me, Cameron, and Toby, goodbye.
Michael, let's go. No, Mike, that was so not right. Get in there, Lewis. George Russell.